Okay, let's go ahead and practice with JavaScript objects. We're going to have an object. This is what our ponder is going to look like when we're done. We're going to have an object that stores these values, and they're going to just come up on the screen here. There's no CSS going on here. That's why it's kind of ugly. We're not going to worry about CSS with this one, but it's going to go ahead and put those values on the screen. And it's also going to have a method that when we go ahead and enter one of the sections, notice it's going to increase the number here every time they click. If they want to add to section 2, they put 2 in and it would add to that one. So that's the idea with this ponder. So we're displaying information from an object as well as calling a method, our own method that we create with this object to enroll students. So let's go ahead and create in our ponder folder a file called courses.html. And we'll go ahead and create also a JavaScript file by the same name. All right, so we're going to start off. Let's go ahead and put our HTML in there. So we do need a shortcut this time. So exclamation tab or enter. And I am going to change the title to be something like JS objects, and go ahead and paste in the body. And I'm going to indent that, take care of some of the extra spaces there. Okay, so we do have a table here, and that might be a little new to you. We're going to have some headers for the table here, and then notice everything that's going to come in from each of the object, or from the object, is going to be inside this body section, which is empty right now. It also has an H1 and an H2 that don't have anything in it right now. And then we have an input so that they can put in which section they want to add to, and of course the button. So let's go ahead and just kind of practice with this object to begin with. So I don't want you to copy all the code yet. I'm going to do it piece by piece so that we can kind of see what's going on here. So here's just a very simple object. It's called a course. It has 3 name value pairs or key value pairs, and it's the code, name, and logo for this. We don't have this logo yet. And right now it's just a text value string going in as the name value pair. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save that, and I do need to connect that to my HTML with a script tag and courses.js, and I'm going to put a defer in here right off the bat. All right, now how do we reference these? Let's start with just a simple console log. So we could do console log, and then put the name of the object, and then dot. And then you could either put code, name, or logo here. So we'll go ahead and just put code, choose one of them. And you'll notice that now if we open this page up and look at the console, we should see that CSE 121B coming in because that is the code value. So again, remember, you can use these code notation with the object name and refer to any of the key names or property names, and then they will return the value there, just like a variable. Okay, so again, we could do the same thing. We just copy that, and we could, of course, put name here, and it would also put the name there. All right, so let's go ahead and put it on the screen this time. So remember, we had these 2 empty H1 and H2, and it actually has the ID of course name and course code in camel case. So we can target those easily with the document query selector, and we can get their IDs. So we can say course name, and then change its text content to be, and then here's where we can again refer to the name property in our a course object, or we could refer to, I'm going to close that down, we could refer to the code. And because that one is a different element, it's code, we're going to change that and that. Okay, and now they should show up on the screen, so we don't have to worry about the console. Okay, so that's how you could dynamically bring in information using an object and its properties, and the values would show up on the screen for you in that H1 and that H2. All right, this really isn't a part of your homework this week, but I did want to show you, because this will happen a lot of time with the API objects coming in that you'll create as JavaScript objects, or fetch them from the API and then create a JavaScript object. They will have images and image paths that are already included in them. So let's just show how we might dynamically put in an image. And I'm going to leave it completely just the image tag, no src, no alt. And we're going to do that dynamically in JavaScript. So if we did have an image called JS logo in our images folder, which right now we don't, let's grab one really fast. And so I'm just going to say JS logo in Google. Wikimedia is a good one. Let me make sure though, let me just make sure that it's going to be not copyrighted. And this one is 500 by 500. I did that just because the last one I got was like 2000 by 2000. It was really big, but we can change the width. I'm just going to go ahead and save it from here and make sure it ends up in that images folder. Oh, I did have one. Let's see. Yeah, I did have one, but you wouldn't have had one. So go ahead, and I'm going to call it exactly what we had in that property value name, js.logo, and save that and replace the one I had. You probably don't need to replace, probably did not have one. Okay, so it still should be there, and it still should work. Okay, so now we do actually have a logo, and it is actually in this pathway that we have here. So again, this could be a hot linked image. It could be whatever's coming from the API as well. All right, so how do we get that on the screen? We could go ahead and target it. The only IMG we have on the page, I didn't give it a class or an ID. And we can go ahead, there's probably other ways to do this, but I'm going to go ahead and just do set attribute and change the src as the first parameter. And then what do we want to change it to? And here's where you put in the name of the object. And then the property name. So now if we save that and look at our page, we will see that coming in. And it's still pretty big, even at 500 by 500. So we might change that here in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and copy this because we're going to do a very similar thing for the alts. We should always have an alt as well. And we can go ahead and just put that as maybe the name of the course, just to make it quick. So it's going to have alt JavaScript language, and go ahead and save that. Again, I'm going to throw in one called style. We've seen this one before, and just change that width. So it's a little bit, whoops, it needs an equal sign, and 100 pixels needs to come in as a string. And then that will make it a little smaller. Okay, so this was just to make it a little smaller on our page, but these two were using the object and property names with dot notation, and it's actually showing up on our page, which is pretty cool. Okay, let's add a little bit more to our object. Let's go back to our Ponder section, and we're going to go ahead and add this sections array to it. Now, we didn't see an array on our introduction video, so this might be a little different. Always put a comma between every name and property pair. In this case, it is another property, so yeah, don't forget that comma there. But instead of just a string or text that we have up here, this one's going to contain an entire array. And inside that array, we have more objects, 2 more objects. This is also very common in real life API data that you'll bring in. It will have nested objects inside object arrays. And so you will see stuff like this, but it is a little different to now call these values because now it's inside of a array. So let's go ahead and just kind of look at and see how that would look. So let's start with the console again. And we'll go ahead and reference the object. This time we'll reference the sections property, but it needs to know which one because now there's multiple things in here. So we're going to use square brackets to let it know which one we want. Let's do one first. And we'll just leave it at that. So we want a console log section, but we want the number one index. And which one will that be? Will that be Brother Thompson or Sister Anderson? So let's go ahead and see what that ended up in our console. And we'll see when we open that, that is actually Sis A, which is the second one. Remember, the indexing on our arrays are 0 based, meaning if we wanted the first one, we would have to use 0, and then we would get Brother Thompson's. All right, so remember, if you're looking at an array inside there, you do need to put the square brackets and let it know which one. It just doesn't know which one of these to get. At this point, then, we could go ahead and put the dot notation for the values that are inside of those objects. And there's the instructor one. And so this one, of course, should put Bro T. Or we could do the other one, and then it would say Sis A. We could also put the room number or days, whatever we want, room num, and it would show the room number for that index 1, which is the second one. So it would do the 347. So just remember, when you've got an array inside of your object, you need to let it know which one inside of that array, and then you can go ahead and drill down further into the different properties there. Let's go ahead and paste in a method that we get from Ponder. So remember, methods are different from the properties. Oh, let me just go ahead and copy the code. And again, this is going to be a little tricky because I'm adding piece by piece, but remember, you've got to put a comma and then the next part. Let me go ahead and indent that like it should be. And this one is not a property. It is, well, it's a property that has a function as its value, which they call methods. Methods will take action upon your object. It's not a very exciting action. It's when they call enroll student, it's just going to console log student was enrolled. So how do you call that? You would go in here and you'd say, again, the object name, and then just simply the name of the method. And then it is a method, so it needs parens. Okay, with or without a parameter. Okay, so now if I save that, I should see student enrolled was called. Okay, so it called that method with the object, and it went ahead and ran this code when that happened. All right, now let's replace it with some more useful code. This code is a little more complicated, so I want to show a very simple one first. But let's go ahead and grab the information. Now, if things weren't working right, you forgot commas or something, you can go ahead and paste this entire thing. I'll go leave what I had and just make sure I put what's inside of the enroll. Watch the curly braces that you get the right number of curly braces there. Let me copy that. And I'm going to replace the console log with that information. Again, if it confuses you or you have some red curly braces here or something, you can just go ahead, replace this whole object with what you had. I'm going to wait on the rest of this. That's why I didn't do the copy code, because I want to just do it bit by bit here again. So now instead of console log, it's going to do something a little more useful for us. It's actually going to add a student to whichever section was picked. And it's not going to run until the user clicks that button. So we will have an event listener here in just a minute. But when this runs, it's using a .findIndex method that's going to go ahead and do a few things for us. It's going to loop through each of the sections. So remember that this keyword just says this object sections, and it's going to go through each one of them. This is one of those array methods that we've used. Oh, I'm seeing these 3 dots here because we do need to bring in what the user actually chose. it's going to have a parameter this time. So it's going to be section num with camel case. And if you copied it, it would have already been there, but I didn't. So I do need to have an actual method coming in this time. Okay, so it's going to go through each of the sections. When it says this section, it's looking right here, and it's saying, go through each one of those and check it and say if the current section is equal to whatever section number the user put in, 1 or 2, find its index. Okay, so it's going to find the index. So it's going to say, hey, section numbers coming in, it was either a 1 or a 2 that the user put into their input. And I'm going to take the current section. Now remember, this word section is kind of like our item that we used in past with the array methods. So it's just going to say the current one, the first time it's going to be this class, section will be this class, and the second time section will be this class. And it's going to say, take the section number 1 or 2, see if it's equal to what the user put in, 1 or 2. So it's going to then find that index of that. So 1's going to become 0 and the 2 is going to become 1, and it's going to store it in section index. I know it's a little confusing. You don't need to completely understand this, but just realize it's doing something a little more useful. And so we had to kind of do some extra code here. So in the end, this is going to get either a 0 or a 1 from the classes. Now, if the user didn't put 1 or 2 in there and we didn't get a 0 or 1, it's actually going to return this find index a -1. So we're going to check and make sure the user didn't put in something other than 1 or 2, and we didn't get back a -1. So that's what this is checking. If that section index is greater than or equal to 0, meaning they got a 0 or a 1 and not a -1, then we're going to go ahead and add 1 to that section. Now, the reason we needed this, remember in the square brackets, we need to let it know which one to add to. And that's going to come in, remember, as a 0 or a 1, because that's what find index assigned to section index here. And it's going to go ahead and add 1 to the proper class. Then it's going to go ahead and re-render or re-show it up on the page. Let me show it here. It's going to redo this section here that we'll see here in a minute so that it has the right numbers. So it's going to put it back on the screen again with a render function, which we haven't put on yet. So let's go ahead and grab that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of the information then so we can understand what the render is. Oh, I didn't get the F there. All right, let's take off how we ran enrolled student, because we're not going to run that anymore until they click a button. So I'm going to make sure that's taken out. And here it is, exactly like we need to have it done. We're waiting until that enroll student button, which is right here, ID enroll student, is clicked. And then in this anonymous function will run, and it will go ahead, grab the value that the user put into that input box, the section number. So there it is, section number, whatever the user put in there. And it's going to grab that value, the 1 or the 2, and it's going to put it into section number. And remember, that's what came in to that method that we just looked at. There is where the actual method gets called. And this only happens after the user has put a 1 or 2 in there. Okay, the render sections, and this is run the first time just with the current values inside of our object, just so we can have something on the screen the first time. In fact, let's go ahead and look at that now that I've added it. And you'll see those two are coming up automatically. I haven't done anything with the method or the add event listener, but I am seeing those two coming in, and that's because this is running right here. It's going in and it's going to grab all of the sections. And again, we're just looking at this part of the object, sending it in, and it's going to go ahead and map those. So that means it's an array, and we're creating a new array with some changes. So for each section class that comes in, it's going to actually call section template right here, and it's going to grab the first classes, section number, room number, how many are enrolled, days an instructor, do it again, and it's adding this table row and table data elements to it, signing it into HTML, and then we're going to put that HTML, just so it doesn't have commas in between, we put a join there, and it's going to replace that empty sections. Remember, we had an empty sections there, and it's going to do that. Now, what's cool about this is these are going to get reused again and again every time our method gets called, because our method renders the new numbers. So after something gets added to this 26 and 28, it's going to rerun it every time they click, every time that A course enroll student method gets called. Okay, so a little bit of new stuff, a little bit of stuff that we've seen, but let's go ahead and see how that's working. So now if the user puts in, I want to add 1 to Brother Thompson's class, and he knows it is section 1. The user doesn't have to worry about zeros and zero indexing. So they're going to say, I want section 1. Now watch the 26, when I click the button, turn to 27. If I keep adding, it's going to keep adding students to his class. If I want to add a student to section 2, the same thing. You'll notice that it's going to go up as you add students there. But because we had our method that was keeping track of 0 and 1 index, we were able to, the user didn't have to worry about that indexing, and it went ahead and added the right number, added 1 to the right course. All right, so a little more complicated, but it's a good more real life, I guess, of calling a method and actually getting something useful to happen. In your homework this week, you will do that with numbers that will increase and decrease as well. Okay, so there we have a little demonstration with how we can use an object with properties, arrays, and methods, and use it on our web app or website.